Hey, it's me. Happy is the person who has truly chosen God. Have you heard that before? Happy is the person who has truly chosen. Now, in our world today, how many people are actually doing this? Some have reached a point of real surrender on their spiritual path. Others think they have, but have only made some half-hearted attempts. So, what does it mean to fully choose God? Choosing God can sometimes feel like you're giving up something, an opinion, a wish, maybe even a certain lifestyle. In truth, you never really lose anything. It just feels that way. Once you show you're willing to let go, you'll find you actually gain much more than you thought you gave up. In fact, you'll realize you lost nothing at all. This surprise only becomes clear after you've taken that step for God's sake, though. Many have misunderstood what it means to make such a decision for God. They think it means leaving the world behind and living in isolation, like that they have to become a monk or a nun, for example. But often those who hide away give up nothing. Meanwhile, there are others who stay in everyday life, yet truly surrender their will to God. They choose God's will in everything they do, say, and intend, even if no one around them notices. Often what you give up for God's sake is later returned to you in much better ways. It's not about giving up something bad or evil. It's enough that you're holding on too tightly to something when you should let God come first. So how can you follow this path if you won't let God guide you completely? How can you be a child of God if you care more about worldly things than about growing closer to Him? You can't just do the minimum, praying a little, thinking a bit about your mistakes, and then keep living as if God's call doesn't exist. You can't stand with one foot in your old life and one foot on the spiritual path. The old way has only brought you trouble. Which do you choose? There comes a point in every soul's growth, whether you're in a body or not, when God's world asks you to put your belief into real practice. For a long time, you might have no belief, no real sense of truth. But there comes a point, a turning point, where you sense God's presence and start to believe in Him. Now this belief must be tested. Things will happen to show you how serious you are. An occasional prayer won't be enough. God wants all of you so He can give all of Himself to you. Only by truly giving yourself to God can you find inner peace. If you have no peace, it's a sign you're holding back a part of your soul from Him. It's like part of you wants God, wants to feel like His child, wants to grow and become pure, while another part thinks, I know better, and it wants to come closer to God on your own terms, not His. You might worry that fully giving yourself to God might somehow be bad for you, and in doing so, you're seeing God's greatness through your own limited point of view. Okay, don't think this means you're just going to be passive. Like, giving up your self-will for God is a form of positive action. The wrong kind of action is when you fight against your own higher self. Now, throughout history, as we talked about, every good, loving, and divine aspect has been twisted into its opposite. Love can become hate and resentment. Justice can turn into injustice. Beauty into ugliness. Harmony into disorder. For those no longer trapped in deep darkness, these extremes aren't dangerous. But hidden beneath many layers are false versions of what is good and real. Many of us may struggle to tell the difference between true goodness and fake goodness in people, the higher self, the lower self, and the mask self. The same mix of truth and untruth lies behind every divine force on earth. One of the most misunderstood divine forces is love. Many things pretend to be love, but really aren't. Like the ego's longing to escape loneliness, it pretends to be love. And the same goes for possessiveness, that pretends to be love. I mean, part of what we're talking about is living by God's law of accepting life's troubles without turning negative, without turning hopeless. And understandably, many people are confused about this. To accept life is God's way, to accept both good and bad and still keep a positive attitude. The distortion comes when self-will fights against anything hard or anything perceived to be negative. Your lower side, influenced by dark forces, may think that being negative means accepting life's hardships. On the flip side, ignoring the fact that hardship exists twists a healthy, hopeful outlook into something false. So it's about finding the right balance, which isn't easy. You got to test yourself and reflect to see where you stray off course. But let me propose a guideline of sorts for acceptance within your soul. Accepting life's troubles doesn't mean you become gloomy. What if the right approach is to say, I know life brings both sadness and joy. I won't run away from tough times. I won't fear the darkness. Only by bravely facing hard times can I learn to handle happiness and share it. You can only reach spiritual balance by not running from sadness through self-pity or fear. If you learn from hard times and ask God in your darkest hour what lesson He wants to teach you, or what inside you caused this trouble, then you have the right attitude. The sun will always shine again. Accept darkness in a constructive way, and you'll find the inner reasons for your difficult moments. Now, all of us must learn lessons about pride, self-will, and fear when we're tested. I mean, isn't it pride that makes you resist unhappiness? Don't you often complain inside, why should I be unhappy? I don't want to be. Only a perfect being could rightfully expect never to be unhappy. And isn't it your self-will that fights against difficulty? You can learn this during hard times. You'll see it. Your fear will leave you once you accept that unhappiness is sometimes needed without imagining it being lasting forever. And this is how you accept life. Your unwillingness to accept life can show itself in different ways. Because you've taken in some teachings with your mind, you might not admit that you refuse unhappiness. But if you notice that you react with defiance, self-pity, or you try to run away from problems, you're showing that deep down you haven't accepted life fully. Any upset feelings you have about your personal troubles show that inside you haven't fully embraced life's rules. You avoid taking responsibility for your problems, and you're not taking life's medicine, so to speak. So try to understand what your feelings say so that you can see them clearly and grow more aware of yourself. Ask yourself, what do these feelings really mean? Am I fighting reality? Is my struggle showing I reject God's lessons because of pride or self-will? Am I scared of this lesson? Scared that maybe I'm too focused on myself? Am I afraid of small hurts? Looking inside for these answers doesn't mean you're being negative. True negativity would be like saying nothing good will ever happen. I'll never see the sun again. You might feel that way even if your mind tries not to. Check your feelings. People think being negative shows acceptance of life's hardships, when in fact, it's another way of fighting them. Another mistake happens with the idea of dignity. True dignity is divine. Its twisted form is pride. How often people are proud of their pride, confusing it with dignity. Real dignity can't exist without humility. If self-will, pride, vanity, and selfishness fill your soul, they bring fear with them. Fear and dignity can't live together. A soul that can humble itself at the right time knows true dignity. I mean, isn't it truly dignified to say to someone, I was wrong, please forgive me? Admitting a mistake never hurts your dignity. I mean, how often do you hold to a viewpoint just to avoid giving in? Why? Because you think this protects your dignity, when it's really just pride. People who haven't awakened spiritually, it's easy to mix those two up. So be careful about disguised and distorted divine forces that pretend to be truth and goodness. I mean, today, the trick used by darkness can be very subtle. Long ago, lies were enough to lead humans away from the divine. But now that people have grown, evil needs to mask itself as good. And that makes it harder to tell right from wrong. But I know you're strong enough. You're strong enough to handle that and see through the falsehood. Now, wouldn't it be great if all misunderstandings and hurts were handled in a spiritual way? Now, of course, you're free to ignore this, but if you're willing, I encourage you to test this out in your own life. Kind of experiment. I want to preface this experiment by saying that what I'm talking about here does not relate to someone who may have abused you or if there was any trauma experienced. Okay? I'm not talking about cases where it's simply healthier to have boundaries and distance yourself from a particular individual. Okay? This is about people who, you may have become distanced from, that you would like to have some kind of relationship with, or at least be civil towards each other. Okay? So hopefully that distinction is clear. So in terms of this experiment that I'm proposing, the first step is to think of someone you dislike and ask yourself why you dislike them. Try hard to see if your viewpoint isn't twisted by personal hurt feelings. Maybe your pride was wounded. Maybe you unknowingly hurt them, causing the tension. And then from there, find what you share in common. Build on that, not on your pride. Show your good side. Show the kindness in your heart. Now, if real incidents happened, reflect on them. Reflect on them carefully and kindly. Should you talk about it? Maybe, maybe not, depending on how free you are from anger. And sometimes it might help to bring this up with a trusted inner circle. The time will come when you feel you can calmly talk to the other person, explain the misunderstanding, how both of you felt hurt, and why you ended up disliking each other. Both sides are always hurting. If you can be honest and open and also listen quietly to the other person's view without fake dignity getting in the way, you'll see there's no real cause for conflict. Not really. All misunderstandings and hurts are, in the end, an illusion. They come from living in a world partly in darkness. We think we have a reason to feel hurt, but is that really true? Find your courage and take that first step toward the person you misunderstood. Okay? You mean not only see what you dislike and what you think is against you, and when you're in that space, it's difficult to see clearly. Maybe you know in your mind that this person has great qualities, but emotionally you don't want to see it. And that's okay. Consider the experiment maybe a later time. But what I suggest is doing this helps both you and the other person. And more importantly, the energy of making peace helps the whole of humanity. Bad feelings and thoughts feed the destructive forces in the world. If we could only sense how each bad feeling adds up and contributes to all the world's pains, crime, injustice, wars, I think we would be shocked. Now, knowing this shouldn't make you lie to yourself and fake nice feelings either. That would be another distortion. Okay, the right way, I would say, is to say to yourself honestly, these are my feelings. I know they might be wrong, i.e., based in darkness, but this is how I feel right now. And by calmly facing your feelings, you've taken the first step toward cleansing yourself. Wrong thoughts and feelings that you can't avoid having right now will then have less power to harm you and to harm the world. Your honesty and goodwill lessen their force. They are strongest when you don't know they exist or you try defending them. Okay, so by doing all of this, you walk closer to God's light. Both your personal life and our entire human family will benefit. I hope this resonated with you. I love you. Let's connect soon.